There's been a lot of controversy. I think people see the crisis of Pope Francis beginning in 2013. They're unsettled, and so they say, well, Pope Benedict is the true pope. His resignation was invalid. Often they refer to the munus ministerium distinction and say that he either accidentally or on purpose made a mistake in his resignation document. Therefore, Pope Benedict is the true pope. Francis is an anti-pope. What do you say about that, Your Excellency?
All these attempts are, for me, against common sense and against evidence, because there are several proofs and expressions of the former Pope Benedict who said that he is not the Pope. Mm-hmm. For example, when his last meeting with the cardinals, when he already announced his resignation, he said to the cardinals, "You will elect a new Pope, to whom I will submit myself and to whom I promise obedience." Mm-hmm. So how can he submit to someone who is not Pope? It is a contradiction and it could, so we do Benedict a schizophrenic person if he would think in this way. Then, in the last general audience, he spoke clearly that I did the resignation with full conscience, with freedom, and knowing all the consequences of this act. So these are their own words. And then there are the other two proofs in a letter which he wrote in 2014 to Andrea Tornielli, it's a Vaticanist, where he repeated almost his words from the general audience and said, there is not the lightest doubt of the validity of my resignation. And it would be absurd to doubt about this. These are words from a letter which was published in the newspaper La Stampa. And then last year, in a conversation of a journalist from the Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera, Pope Benedict said the words as reported by the journalist, and I assume he reported this correctly. I cannot, from principle, deny that these journalists did not report the words of the Pope. In any case, he reported this in quotation marks in the written edition, and then the Vatican News the same in quotation marks. The former Pope Benedict said, there is only one Pope, and this is Francis. Mm-hmm. So we have, and then the other principle, we are the visible church. We are not a church of dreamers, agnostic church. We are the real incarnational church, a visible church. So, and therefore, the superior has a kind of, the position of the superior has a kind of presumption of his validity. And then also the church does not judge about the interior intentions. We cannot see these, but judge on the words and acts, the exterior. And there are sufficient exterior words of the Pope, which he stated that he abdicated, he made a resignation with full conscience and with freedom. And independently how he behaves now, he is vesting as a Pope, he is giving the apostolic benediction, but this is another case. This is his behavior, but his official words are clear that there is only one Pope. And he also himself mentions Pope Francis in the canon of the Mass. So,
yes. Now I saw.
Then he is not governing. He is not making no act of jurisdiction. So he is not naming bishops. He is not naming cardinals. If he would be a pope, really.
Yes.
If, for example, there is only one pope, as they say, Benedict, and not Francis, then all the bishops appointed in these 7 years are invalid bishops.
Yes. Well, I guess they'd be
the
real bishops, but not, they'd have no ordinary jurisdiction.
No, I mean invalid because of jurisdiction, not of the consecration. The consecration is valid, the ordination, but their jurisdiction is invalid.
Right.
And then
that's a problem.
And all the cardinals appointed by the Pope, now they are more than the half of the College of Cardinals appointed by Pope Francis. So Cardinal Müller would be not cardinal because he was appointed by Francis.
Yes.
And so on. It would be an absurdity. So we will go to the direction of the sedevacantists.
Yes.
And then let us say also all the practical consequences. If Benedict dies tomorrow, according to them, Pope Francis is not Pope.
Yeah.
So we will be without Pope. And then who will elect the new Pope? Who? Because the more than the half of the College of Cardinals are not cardinals according to them, because they were appointed by Francis. It is impossible practically. The church cannot exist then, because, and I cannot imagine no one cardinal who was appointed before Francis who would convoke a conclave to elect the successor of Benedict when he tomorrow dies, for example.
Yes. And then
when Francis will still live and reign, let us say 6-7 years. So we will be, according to their thesis, 6-7 years sedevacantists, the entire church,
right,
without a pope. And this is against the divine constitution of the visibility of the church.
Yes.
So all these, the consequences of these theses is going simply to absurdity. Absurdity.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, if Benedict XVI, Ratzinger, right now is celebrating Mass, and in the Te Igitur, or whatever canon he's using, is saying the name Francis una cum, he's really the Pope. He is in schism with himself. How is that possible?
Yes, exactly. It's a good argument. And he does this because people who assist in his Mass, he mentions una cum Francisco, Papa Nostro.
Yes. So there it is. And you were recently with Benedict Ratzinger, I think last year. There's a photo of you with him.
Yes.
And what was it? I'm just curious, what was it like being with him?
Yes, he was very sharp-minded, very conscious, even bodily frail. But he spoke with the entire group of our bishops from Central Asia. Very, how do you say? I would say I was on his side because I had to translate from.
Yeah, you were speaking the German.
German translating to the other bishops. And I was observing he was reacting so vigilantly, so consciously to every bishop. It was a proof that he is very sharp in his mind. And he said to me, because I was the first who came to him, they said to me, "You are German, you go first." And so I went to him first and I greeted him in German. And he suddenly said to me a phrase, I don't like to say this here now, but a phrase which is so personal to me, which only he could know about me. He spoke something about me in so a precise manner and directly in German that it was for me a proof that this man is very sharp-minded still, and he knows all what is going on.
Yes.
And therefore, the book which he wrote together with Cardinal Sarah on priestly celibacy, it is for me, I'm convinced he was doing this consciously and with his sharp mind.
Yes.
He was not in some way as as journalists said against Cardinal Sarah, that that Cardinal Sarah abused him for his aims. No, I was a witness, at least in March last year, during the ad limina, that he was so, and so he reacted to other bishops the same. I was in his side, for example.
And if he were still the Pope, I assume many of those bishops in that audience would have been appointed to their diocese by Francis, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, they were.
He would not. I mean, was there anything that would give one way or the other the pretense that he thought he was the Pope or didn't think he was the Pope in your meeting with him?
I did not notice this. Right. He was simply a very kind, fatherly behavior, paternal behavior. And so, and let us say another hypothesis, if Pope Francis tomorrow converts radically and becomes a true zealous Pope, like
Pius X, yes.
Let us say, because God can do this. He is almighty. And conversions did happen in the history of the church. St. Paul converted Saul to Paul, and so on. If he converts and starts to expel the wrong teaching and to maybe make a dogma, proclaim a dogma, ex cathedra, let us say that the sacrament of the orders in all its three grades, diaconate, presbyterate, and episcopate, is reserved only for the persons of the male sex. If he would proclaim this ex cathedra, would these people who do not recognize him as Pope accept this dogma? A question.
Yes.
And if he would really fulfill his duty, then with all the zeal, would they accept him?
My suspicion is most of these people are, like so many of us, wounded and are confused. These are very, you're a bishop, you're highly educated, you're multilingual, and we have to admit it's very complicated. And so for people, they just want certainty and they don't want to be afraid and they don't want to be confused. And I think for most people, this is the position. They don't want to be a full-out sedevacantist. And so the idea that Benedict is still the Pope is a comfort to them, and it maybe allows them to lead their life. But as you pointed out, the consequences of this position are very drastic. They're severe.
Yes, you are correct, and I can understand. And in some way, it is mitigated factors, because really the confusion is so tremendous. I can understand this, but it is not. It is wrong. Even so, I have to state this is wrong, and a wrong way, because maybe ultimately hidden, these people are not accepting the cross, the tremendous cross of this pontificate, that we are now staying on Golgotha and seeing as our Mother Church is crucified with this tremendous confusion, with this papacy. And they cannot, and they in some way are going away from the cross and fabricating another world, their world, with Pope Benedict. And so this is, for me, in some way, also a lack of trust that God is holding his church in the hands, that God will put an end to this trial also in his time. And these people should simply not too much concentrate themselves to the popes, I mean to the Pope, not necessary. They have the catechism, the traditional catechism. They know the faith. They have the Holy Mass. They have Jesus in the Eucharist. They can do good works. They can do penance and they can pray. They can spread the faith. Why should they daily look and be concentrated on the Vatican and Rome? It's not necessary. They can, in former times, people lived and spread the faith, even not knowing the name of the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
There were no television, there was nothing. But they were edifying the church with their life, with their faith. And so I would recommend this, my dear brothers and sisters. Abandon this absurdity of this thesis that Pope Benedict is still the Pope. This is completely a fantasy, and descend to the reality of the cross, and do not be so much concentrated on the Vatican and what the Pope is doing, and live your life and offer your sacrifices for the renewal of the church, for the renewal of the papacy. And God will accept this.